All right, I guess we can officially begin. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. It's FSMTA's version of Saturday Night Live. I got that one from Charles. My name is Diana Dumlawala, and I currently serve as president for the Florida State Music Teachers Association. Welcome to the first in a series of online events that will take place over the next several weeks. These events stem from our state conference, which unfortunately had to be canceled due to the effects of Hurricane Ian last year. Our fantastic conference co-chairs, Gail Berenson and Charles Turan, curated such a wonderful program revolving around the inspiring theme, Breaking Barriers Through Music. We didn't want to let all their initiative, time, and planning go to waste. And so the idea of an online series over several weeks came to fruition. Although we all wish we could have met in Venice, Florida, as originally planned, we're very excited that this will enable us to reach even more people. Later this evening, Gail and Charles will tell us more about what is planned for the coming weeks. Right now, I would like to focus our attention on the events for this evening. As the theme of the conference started to take on a life of its own, Gail and Charles proposed the idea of recognizing individuals who have truly broken barriers. We'll be hearing from two of these individuals as speakers tonight, and one is a former member of FSMTA who has done so much for the music education scene in Miami. We are thrilled that this evening we will have the chance to learn from these individuals and be inspired by the impact they have made and continue to make in their communities through the use of music. The Breaking Barriers Award recognizes special contributions made in improving access to music, music education, and music making for historically underserved segments of society. Thanks to UPS or FedEx or US Post, I don't know, all our honorees have received their awards. But tonight, we want to take the time to recognize each of them individually and celebrate their meaningful achievements and contributions to our society. To start off our evening, I would like to invite Joy McIntyre to give the welcoming address. Miss McIntyre was a leading soprano with major opera houses in Europe. Miss McIntyre is Associate Professor Emerita and former chair of the Voice Department of Boston University. She is past president of the Boston chapter of the National Association of Teachers of Singing. She received degrees from the Oberlin Conservatory and the New England Conservatory of Music, where she was holder of the Emma Eames Scholarship. She also studied at the Mozarteum in Salzburg, Austria, and the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts. And she holds a certificate in German from the Goethe Institute. Currently, Ms. McIntyre serves on the board of directors for the Sarasota Concert Association as past president and the Sarasota Music Archive as vice president. Please join me in giving your very best Zoom welcome to Joy McIntyre.
Thank you very much, Diana. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to this vital exchange of ideas and expertise at the Florida State Music Teachers Association Conference. Your storied history, reaching even further back than the official founding in 1934, is evidence of the visionary commitment by Florida teachers of music both then and now. Through this wonderful organization, you have found ways to promote the achievement and advancement of your students by sharing knowledge and experience with each other. As you well know, being a teacher of music is not always easy. Every young person who comes through your door brings a different personality and a whole different set of musical challenges. The theme of this conference, with its message of overcoming barriers, has certainly been put to the test. The battering of Hurricane Ian as well as the COVID pandemic, have brought untold challenges and great loss to many of the people of our state, and our thoughts remain with them all. My sincere congratulations to your president, Diana Dumlavala, as well as conference co-chairs, Gail Berenson and Charles Turan. Not only for putting this exciting program together, but for the creativity and ability to transform the conference into an online format, enabling them to reach out to all of you. I'm especially honored to welcome you to this conference because I know how valuable the work that you do is. For your young students, you are the front line, the safety net, and the builders of skills that can inspire a lifetime. At the Boston University Tanglewood Institute, where I taught for many years, I have seen it happen. During the summer, BUTI brings students of diverse backgrounds together, ages 14 to 19, from all over the country and some foreign countries, for 6 weeks of an immersive musical experience. For most of them, it is the first time they can fill their entire day with music. Music theory, music history, music literature, practice time, lessons, lectures, rehearsals, performances. Not only their own performances, but concerts by the legendary Boston Symphony Orchestra. I have seen the light in the eyes of the young singers and instrumentalists as they discover yet another piece of great music literature. It opens their minds to new possibilities of music making and self-expression. Whether they become professional musicians or not, a musically trained mind is a valuable instrument. And in their feedback, the students tell us it is a life-altering experience. Recently, a young violinist, Max Tan, did a series of concerts in Sarasota. Max, who was preparing to compete in the Wieniawski competition in Poland, came to Sarasota specifically to practice his repertoire in as many local venues as he could find. 224 musicians applied for the Wieniawski competition. 41 were selected to come to Poland. Out of that field, Max was named a semifinalist. A tremendous achievement. Well done, Max. As I listened to his dazzling technique and affecting interpretation, I realized that every time Max played, he got a little bit better. What a life lesson that is. Whether as a musician or simply as a human being, every day, just a little bit better. But let me go back to you. You are what this conference is about. You are the torchbearers. You are in the trenches. You are the ones who are opening the hearts and minds of young people to the great adventure called music. For your students, you are the gateway to a richer and more complete life experience. And with that happy thought, let me welcome you to the splendid Florida State Music Teachers Association Conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joy, for that inspiring, welcoming address.
Thank you. My pleasure.
It is now my distinct honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Adrian Anantawan. Adrian holds degrees from the Curtis Institute of Music, Yale University, and Harvard Graduate School of Education. As a violinist, he has studied with Itzhak Perlman, Pinka Zuckerman, and Anne-Sophie Mutter. His academic work in education was supervised by Howard Gardner. Memorable moments include performances at the White House, the opening ceremonies of the Athens and Vancouver Olympic Games, and the United Nations. He has performed for the late Christopher Reeve, Pope John Paul II, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Adrian has performed extensively in Canada as a soloist with the orchestras of Toronto, Nova Scotia, Winnipeg, Saskatoon, Montreal, and Edmonton and Vancouver. He has also presented feature recitals at the Aspen Music Festival and the Weill Recital Hall at Carnegie Hall in New York. Adrian has and continues to engage in significant initiatives that make a difference for young people with disabilities. I'll talk a bit more about this after his presentation. Adrian is also a Juno Award nominee, a member of the Terry Fox Hall of Fame, and was awarded a Diamond Jubilee Medal from Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II for his contributions to the Commonwealth. He's the current chair of music at Milton Academy and on faculty at Boston University's Tanglewood Institute during the summer. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Adrian Anantawan.
Thank you so much for this welcome, Diana. Thank you for your remarks, Joy. I definitely connected on the BUTI connection, just seeing incredible musicians continue to grow and flourish and really find their voice through art and music in particular. I wanted to thank all of you for joining via Zoom. I know that it can be a little bit more challenging to be further apart. Irony is, tomorrow I'm actually headed down to Sarasota, so maybe I'll see some of you over the next week or 8 days or so. I think there's some events through the Van Wezel Foundation, so I really hope that you can make it. But I think that what I'll start with first is always, I think, like a musical handshake. And I know that we're so used to being able to share music via Zoom because of our ongoing pandemic. But I think I've gotten the hang of how the microphones work. So I'm going to play a couple movements from a Bach partita just to frame this entire evening and then talk a little bit about my story, the work that I do with kids with disabilities, and just the amazing and profound impact that music and music educators had on my life. So let me just switch on. Sorry, I'm gonna do musicians. Sound from musicians, which is a nice add-on for Zoom. It's nice. All right, and have my violin present. So these are a couple movements from the Bach Partita number 3. This is a Lore followed by a Gavotte. Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to bring this mic a little bit closer and hopefully that sounded okay all the way from Boston. Uh, Again, it's an honor to be able to not only share music, but really talk a little bit about the story behind these notes. I think a lot of the times whenever I perform, it was always accumulation of the beliefs and mindsets of those around me. And it wasn't just music educators, but it really extended all the way back to the very beginning of my life. So I thought I will share a quick prezi. Give me a sec. I just want to make sure that everything is good right here. All right, could we get a thumbs up if you can see this? Excellent, wonderful. So my story, like everyone else, really does start from where I was or when I was born. I was a surprise to my parents in a sense that my mom did not know that I was going to be born without a right hand. She is on the right of the screen, and clearly I am enjoying my time with her. But I think that she was very scared to present me to my grandmother for the first time, who is on the left of the screen. And that's me, of course, as a tiny baby, because in certain cultures, and Asian culture is no exception, disability can be seen as a curse upon the family. So I think that my mom just didn't know how my grandmother would react to me. Would she accept me, or would I be ostracized from the family? So I went to Hong Kong with my mom as a baby, and she said, my grandmother said, there's nothing wrong with him. He laughs like any baby, he cries like any baby. All he needs is a little bit of exercise. So she went to the marketplace in Hong Kong and found me a little toy. This bracelet that you see here to the right is actually a picture of the bracelet that she got for me. It was less tarnished than it is now. But as you can tell, if you look closely, there are a couple bells that are attached to the bracelet. And the idea was whenever I was going around in the crib and shaking all of my limbs, if my grandmother would put this bracelet on my small hand, it would make a musical sound. It would just start jingling. And because I loved that music so much, I just shook my right arm as vigorously throughout the day as possible because I was just fascinated by the sound. And she told me in retrospect that it was so I could get more exercise with my right hand and work on my biceps and really just create a sense of like equalization between both of my limbs. I'm not sure if it actually ended up working in the long term, but it definitely was. I consider this my first musical instrument, and it really set from the very beginning this involvement of music in my life. Even though I was a percussion player in this instance, I was just fascinated by all music. I was listening to the radio, I liked to sing, and was really excited when my fifth grade teacher wanted us all to play a musical instrument. And the instrument that she chose, which she, I think, considered accessible, was the recorder, because it's relatively easier to learn. It's not as expensive. You can scale to getting an instrument for maybe everyone in the school. But it was an instance in which I was not disabled as an identity, but really the environment that was around me was constructed in a way that I was in a disabling environment. And I think that was an important inflection point in my life. I think about it in retrospect. There were several things that were working against me at that time. The first, obviously, were the materials that were being used, the recorder, because I could not play all the notes with my fingers. The second was just creating like this environment of acceptance and inclusion with the teacher themselves, which really stemmed from attitudes, for better or worse. I think that I don't, in retrospect, blame this teacher. I just don't think she knew that there were other possibilities at play. So my parents, being who they were and also incredible advocates, decided that I would just do my own instrument and just try something else. So the first option was the trumpet, and it was a very practical solution because I could hold it up with one hand and maybe I could use a stand eventually, but I really did not find the sound attractive to me personally. So we started looking for different options. My dad said the cheapest instrument was the human voice. So I decided to try singing, but I don't think my timbre was as nice as my parents would have liked. So I was sort of at a loss of like trying to figure out what might work. And by happenstance, I was watching Sesame Street. And Sesame Street is just incredible for showing children well ahead of its time, like just different identities and acceptance and love for just the multiplicity of human beings that we see in this world. And I came across this incredible clip.
Those steps. You know, some things that are really easy for you are real hard for me.
Yeah, but some things are easy for you that are hard for me.
I absolutely love that clip, and within a minute and 3 seconds, my life felt transformed. All of a sudden, on TV, there was a man who was representing an identity that I did not see on television being celebrated. And you could clearly tell, I mean, Sesame Street had conveniently set this up, that the stairs were the environment in which he felt disabled. And the man's name is Ishak Perlman, for those who don't know violin. And he is one of the preeminent violinists of our time. And all of a sudden, when he picked up the instrument, he turned into someone that not necessarily negated his disability, but represented a part of him that was tremendously compelling, complex, and especially virtuosic. Ishak Perlman grew up with polio, and the reason why he started the violin was because it was an activity that he could do with his hands rather than walking around or trying to run. I didn't really realize that when I said to my parents, well, here's a man with a disability who plays the violin. I want to play the violin now. First of all, my dad groaned because it was like, well, this is an expensive instrument. Are you sure? My heart was very much set on it. And we sort of just got the instrument and then just took it one step at a time. So I had no clue how an actual adaptation would have worked. And I remember my parents and I trying to set up trial lessons with various violin teachers in the area where I grew up. And I'd come with my case and everything, and the teachers, as politely as they could, said, well, I don't know if this is going to be doable, like maybe check in a couple months and maybe we can just think about it. It was always about thinking about it more. But there was one teacher who said, you know what, we don't even have to think about it, let's just do. And she got me to take out the violin, and we began immediately with a technique called left hand pizzicato. So for those who are not violinists or string instrumentalists, it's a technique where you essentially just use your left hand to make notes. So the first notes I was playing were open strings, like this, and then a lot of the times we started off in Suzuki, the Suzuki violin method. So my first songs were left hand pizzicato playing. Then I would go on to the next song. And then the third song. And it was like an adaptation from the very beginning. Not sure if it was the best possible pedagogy. I mean, I was shifting all over the place already. I had a relatively strong pinky finger, the weakest of the fingers for violinists, right away. But it was a pedagogy based on do what you can in the moment and figure things out as you go. And this teacher really just set me up for having a love of music first and focusing on what I could do versus what I couldn't do. And who's to say that plucking an instrument with this technique was not music? For me, it was expressive, it was fun, it was a game that I was excited to play and practice every single day. So eventually, I knew I had to create an adaptation for the bow, and I was very lucky to go to a rehabilitation center in Toronto called Holland Bloorview, and I went to this place to get a lot of other adaptations made for me as someone with one hand. So I had like a swimming arm that was waterproof that helped me paddle. I had a myoelectric arm that was something that I could move my muscles so the motor would open and close like an artificial limb. So when I came with the violin, the prosthetic engineers were there, saw it as another project, and they didn't say no, and said, we'll just work with this, because that was the world that they were in. It was always based upon innovation and doing your best and like just figuring things out. And it was also useful in some ways that they knew nothing about the instrument, because if they had, maybe they would have said no, because there are too many things that are complex. Like you need to have a wrist, you have to have articulating fingers in order to play the bow. There are so many factors in play that create an expressive sound. Eventually, though, they did come up with this device right here. Let me actually stop my share for a sec, and I'll come back. This is a spatula. So it's a plaster cast, if you can see here. And it has, let me see, some Velcro that wraps around. And then this is just a piece of putty right here on the bow. So this black part, this frog comes off. We slipped this tube in and then put it back on with the screw. And all I was doing was moving my shoulder back and forth. And it was very simple. And again, just one step at a time. And this was another instance in which, like, just do something rather than think about it. And all of a sudden I was able to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star with the bow. It didn't sound that great, obviously, but it wasn't a failure of the adaptation. It was really just I had the same problems and challenges as any other musician who's learning to play the violin. And it's how do you make a good sound? How do you connect what you're hearing into something that is an expression of your imagination? And my teacher told me that in music, the most important appendages that you have are not your hands, but your ears. And the idea of like being able to absorb sound, to go to your practice room or space and treat it as a laboratory to create a sound that is something that might have been referenced that I heard in an Ishak Perlman CD or recording, and I just tried to replicate it and gain that vocabulary using my own unique body. And I think it is and was a pedagogy that I still keep to this day. It's one that really encourages this sense of self-agency for a student that doesn't necessarily start with like where you want them to be. Like I always say this to my students, is I might have preconceptions or biases of where I feel like a student might be, but to really observe closely from the very beginning. I know a lot of you do this too, of where a student is in the present moment, and really just find presence and stillness to be able to listen deeply, to be able to respond, to be able to facilitate in a way that is conducive towards allowing as much agency and creative expression for a child as possible. It can be harder. I know those who are working in special education, where a child might be nonverbal, for instance, or young kids, it's difficult sometimes to know what they're really getting at times, especially if they are younger. But there are so many cues that I know that you're sensitive to, and great virtuoso teachers are, of body language, pauses, of like intonation, like inflection of how the voice goes, all these little clues that are such small but so meaningful in terms of the details that you can absorb in terms of information that a child might be giving you, or a classroom might be giving you at a certain point. That takes a lot of patience, obviously, because I think that a lot of the teachers that probably were thinking about like maybe I shouldn't play the violin, we're already thinking like how can we get results as immediately as possible, because the idea of like if he can't play like a beautiful piece of music within the first year, then all hope is lost. But I think for me, my teacher was so great at framing, well, this is just the same as everyone else. Everyone struggles. And interestingly, I felt so much less alone and connected to my own humanity as a result of this process. And it became such a meaningful part of my life that all of a sudden music was not just a fun thing to do, but was my way of exploring the world and finding an identity that wasn't only about how I looked, but especially how I sounded on the instrument. And whenever and I'm sure you have stories about this too, where you have that beautiful mix of like a student, like this is who they are versus what they do. That motivation and that catalyst of like striving for continual excellence is something that was and is something that I continue to strive for to this day. So let me just share my screen again. Here we go. Exit full screen. Let me see. Sorry, give me a second. Here we go. So after that, I started playing, and I essentially just sort of took it as far as I could from age 10 to a point where I was just so grateful and lucky to just be accepted to college for music and start performing. I actually got the opportunity to work with Ishak Perlman during the summer times, which was just like a full circle moment for me. And then I just started performing and touring with Anantaway Mutter, and like being able to share my art form with the world in a very public perspective was extremely like always pinch me moments, as much as ones that, as much as I cherish, were also not necessarily as aligned to what I really wanted to do in life. Even when I was at Curtis, the metrics of success at a elite conservatory were always like, will you be in an orchestra? Will you play chamber music? Will you be a soloist? But I remember like just loving working with young people, and I felt a little bit out of place in that way. It was like a little secret that I had to harbor, which in retrospect, in my generation, there were other folks who were really keen on like, how do we not only find better ways to teach music, but how can we make music a vessel in which we can express identities, especially those who are marginalized. So I did a recital back at Holland Bloorview where I had my adaptation made. And usually I was in the prosthetics department getting my casts and everything done. But on the other side of the hallway, there was an entire music therapy wing that I hadn't even really had a chance to observe. And I came across this incredible musical instrument that I'll show you right here.
Thank you for choosing VMI, Virtual Music Instrument. Virtual Music Instrument uses cutting-edge motion detection technology to translate movements into music. The system generates musical sounds from movements interacting with colorful shapes on the screen. When you start the software, it will activate the connected webcam. The webcam captures yourself and your movements related to the shapes you draw on the screen. VMI will interpret the motion and transfer the output to speakers.
Oh, sorry, let me do a little. So an instrument like that was a revelation to me, to be able to see folks and children especially who had more profound disabilities than myself, still making music, still finding ways to connect to each other. And the beauty of a virtual music instrument like that is you could see shapes were drawn within the vicinity of movement that certain users had. So if you were only able to extend your arm like to the left, like, I don't know, half a foot, for instance, they would put this shape intentionally there so that the student could make a musical sound. But there were also therapeutic outcomes where they would move a shape just slightly beyond the reach of someone who had muscle flexibility challenges. And instead of doing stretches or exercises that were more clinical, you're just like, oh, well, let's try to hit this note and like extend that challenge so that you can continue connecting through music and to the rest of your community. And that type of motivation within the context of therapy, they've done so many studies about this. When you attach music or use music in some way within a therapeutic context, outcomes are always going to become more positive than without. So I was fascinated by this instrument, and I said to myself, well, what can we do within the context of not only music performance, but also music education to leverage a tool like this? And I was very fortunate to have a friend. His name is Eric. Eric was a violinist himself, and he became paralyzed as a result of an illness. And we were talking at Holland Bloorview, and he said, you know, the one thing that I would love to do that I would never even just think of being possible, to play chamber music with my friends again. And I said, you know what, Eric, what if we tried to find a way to use the virtual music instrument in a way that would work within this context? And thus the VMI initiative was born. It was one of my first projects where we brought together doctors and researchers, music therapists, and musicians to adapt this tool so that Eric could play with his peers again. So I'm going to play a video of the results of that. Let's try the first two variations.
Which one would you like to keep? The quarter notes?
Let's keep the quarter notes.
Okay, so that was.
Is that okay, Eric? I think we're covering you right now. We can't hear any of the counterpoints, so why don't we start from there first? When I see someone like Eric producing music and we can react off of that into something completely new in a new territory, well, it makes it fresh again.
For me as an artist, it was fascinating to see how technology was married into the aesthetic and music making experience.
Yep, we're all playing.
The ability to create music with just the wave of a hand with small gestures or moving your head, it was something very powerful.
I've learned playing with the violin for about 8 years before I got paralyzed. Ever since I got paralyzed, I really didn't think that I was able to play an instrument again. I've never done it in the settings like this before, not mentioning being on the stage. It's an incredible feeling. It's not something that I thought I would be able to do before the VMI was invented. It's pretty good.
Yay! Bravo! Great job, Eric. I think that came together pretty quickly. Yeah. Great. So we ended up starting with the chamber music setting of Pachelbel's canon, and we eventually had Eric come up on stage with the Montreal Chamber Orchestra, which was just an incredible, moving experience. And again, like speaking of like inflection points in life, it really sort of galvanized me to think, well, of course I like performing, but like what am I doing to really sort of realize this passion that I have to be able to create accessible pathways for young musicians in particular. And I decided to sort of move on from sort of the typical sort of developing soloist performer life and go back to school. So that's what led me to, let me just take that off for a sec. There we go. Sorry about that. Again, led me to study at Harvard, and specifically how we could use tools like the virtual music instrument and other adaptive musical instruments within a universal design UDL framework. And essentially, I'm sure a lot of you already know, UDL really focuses on the neuropsychology of learning, thinking about the idea that the brain learns through affect. We express in different ways, and information is represented in various ways for our learners to be able to have optimal learning outcomes. So really thinking from a research perspective and a academic perspective of how we could improve practices for inclusive education for music, and particular my form of music, which is like large ensembles, more classical type groups. I was grateful to do a teaching practicum at the Henderson Inclusion School in Boston, which is and remains one of the models of inclusion within a public school within the country, founded sometime in the 70s around the movement of a lot of parents for more inclusive practices in education. And their principal, William Henderson, is blind himself. I'll get back to that a little bit later. But I really took the time to be able to really just make that leap and an adjacent sort of space within education, and then started working right away. And that was great, just like getting to know how to run programs and work with young people day to day. So I started off as a co-director at a Sistema inspired school in Boston, and they had music every day for about 2 hours, and it was a beautiful experience for several years. Then now I'm here at Milton Academy in Boston, and as part of the work that I do, which is I think quite a bit now these days, I founded a program called the Music Inclusion Program, which is housed at the Henderson School. So again, full circle, where we are currently running a program where students come together. Half of them have moderate to severe disabilities, and the others are typical students. And we really figure out how to make a model work, very similar to what I was saying in terms of pedagogy. Pedagogy is like one step at a time, and let's just do. And not to say that you don't think. I think it's do and then think later, and constant iteration and constant time reflecting upon improving practice, because a lot of this work, even if you are in a typical program, it requires space and practice. Just like being in or preparing for a concert. Our classes, we spend a significant amount of time every single week almost doing dress rehearsals and trying to think, okay, what can we learn from the previous week to make things better for this week, and really just being in a space where we're as reactive as possible for all of our students. And it's been a beautiful trajectory. We started in right before the pandemic started in the fall of 2019, and then we, like a lot of folks, had to go virtual. And we have restarted this year, finally in person, last September. And the students, actually by next week, are getting their instruments for the first time after doing sort of instrument trials and everything. So we're very excited for them to start playing a variety of string instruments and adaptive instruments like the virtual music instrument, using iPads, and really just working on the fly, as much as like understanding that the true intention is like we just want to be able to create an environment where students can use their imaginations, cooperate, express themselves, and really just grow together as an ensemble, not only from last September, but to the end of the school year. So I am, yes, deeply engaged in this work currently. We've been able to create a lot of different adaptations based on student needs. So I remember one time, Jack, a student with cerebral palsy, really wanted to play the xylophone and didn't have the accuracy to hit the right notes at the right time. So what we ended up doing, and I guess we're running out of time, so maybe I'll send this video later. We got an ad hoc student group together, and they created a digital xylophone where all the keys were massive, and so he could be within the range of like 2 or 3 inches of the center and still play notes and really participate with his peers. So small adaptations like that really going towards what a child considers beautiful versus what is considered practical. I think students are, yes, attracted to sort of like the looks of the instrument, but I think a lot of the times, in my opinion, they're attracted to the sound. And we can find ways to do that in an adaptive setting or use tools to be able to achieve those aims. It really is our responsibility to listen to those preferences first and try our best. And most of the times, in my experience, and I'm sure you've had these too, students stick with it if they know it's something that they really love from the very beginning. So, oops, let me just do this again. I'm going to switch slides. Yes, so let's see. So we are continually in this space in the world where we still have all these problems in the world. And I know that all of you understand the question of music's relevance, especially now in these times. And you all have your own stories that I would love to hear you share over the duration of this conference, that those moments of transformation. But I thought I would share one more with you. So as I continue to do my work and perform, I also get to travel. And I had the fortune of meeting a young girl named Farah, who was from Palestine and grew up in the refugee camps, lost both of her arms. And she was so attracted to like the concert. At the end of my time playing at the hospital, I was very grateful to give her the opportunity to pluck my instrument with her feet. So I'm going to just show you that right now. Just very quickly. Yeah, let me try this. Okay. Yeah, ready. Okay. Go. Mm-hmm. Yay! Good song! Very good. So I'm sure that, again, all of you have stories of just like being present at an inflection point in a child's life where like they are changed forever through one experience. And as I was saying, for me, it was Ishraf Perlman. Farah became obsessed with like the violin after I left, and she really wanted to play. And so we actually did like sort of a transatlantic sort of Zoom collaboration where we set her up with some specialists and expertise from across the ocean, basically just thinking about what we could do best to allow her to play. We realized eventually that the violin was a little bit too small for her, so we settled upon the cello, which she could actually put on the floor and with a specialized bench and everything sort of learn. And I want to share that with you and where she is now. This is about a year later. So Farah is continuing to play music to this day, and I just loved what she was saying about music making her happy. And in a space in her life where there has been such challenge. I think that it's always a beautiful reminder for us as we continue sharing these stories that what we are doing is not merely teaching technique or like aiming for the next big concert, but really just sharing joy and bringing happiness to our students that we serve, and to know that like as educators, like they have people in their lives that are there to care about them and their well-being as much as allow them to find different ways to be able to soar with their own voices. So this is continual passion work for me, and I know that a lot of you engage in this too. There's so much so many details involved and so much struggle day to day, but so long as we keep these North Stars, I think it's so important for us to really just share together just the amazing things that you already do. And so I feel like I am amongst colleagues and extremely humbled to be able to just be in this space together. Thank you for all that you do. So I think I have maybe like a few more minutes. So I thought I would just end with one quick piece of music. And this is a very special one that my grandmother loved. This is from the Butterflies Lovers Concerto, which really represents to me just the idea of transformation of like my grandmother's vision from the very beginning of seeing me as a complete person. And I think for me, it's great honor to be able to see that manifested in how I play to this day. Okay, I'm going to turn my original sound on again. Okay, let's see if this works. Great. Thank you again so much, and I am so excited to continue connecting with all of you again. If anyone is in the Sarasota area, I'll be there pretty much all week. I think there's a concert that we're doing outdoors, and it's a program that includes composers with disabilities. I'm playing actually with a pianist who is also missing her several fingers in her left hand, and we're playing Beethoven together. So it's just an incredible confluence of disability identity and arts and excellence. And if you can find some time to make it, I hope that you can. So thank you, and looking forward to learning from all of you and the rest of the speakers in this incredible conference. Wonderful. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Adrian. That was a really very, excuse me, inspiring keynote address, and with beautiful performances. It's wonderful that we can hear that beauty still through Zoom. So thank you so much. And I was just really touched, and it really struck a chord with me of everything that you said, and just your humility and generosity of spirit in making sure that music is accessible to all people, and especially children, despite their challenges. And just wonderful for us to, start our new year with that message. I think from everything that we have learned about you, it is probably pretty clear to everyone why FSMTA has chosen Adrian to be one of the first recipients of the Breaking Barriers Award, and as a way to recognize his extraordinary work. In preparation for this conference and the 2022 MTNA National Conference, I interviewed Adrian about a year and a half ago for an American Music Teacher article. I would like to read a couple of excerpts from that article to express how Adrian has made an impact on music education and why he is breaking barriers. As we heard from his keynote address, Adrian was fortunate to study with teachers who looked beyond his disability and worked with his immense talent. They taught him to sensitize his ears to what good sound is, and he learned to grow through imitation. Having the tools to express his thoughts, emotions, and feelings on the instrument was groundbreaking for him. He felt like he could do something and that he could help make a contribution to the world. Through his studies, he also discovered that relationships are just as important as the art you produce. Adrian crucially noted that, quote, "If you have the right teacher, it can really change your life," end quote. I think that's a huge responsibility for all of us. Adrian has already talked about his significant involvement in using music to represent inclusivity as a model towards the rest of our society. It was great to see, and I'm paraphrasing here, I didn't say this in the article, but it was great to see all the, through the videos, all the work that was done with the Virtual Chamber Music Initiative at Holland Bloorview, and how people could really actually make music. This project developed out of his desire to provide opportunities for others. And he said, quote, "I don't want to be an exception," end quote. For better or for worse, our society is enamored with individuals born with disabilities who are able to beat the odds and succeed in their chosen endeavors. Their successes are seen as unique, unusual, and unprecedented. However, Adrian would love to help make this completely ordinary. Seeing people with disabilities succeed should be a part of our daily lives. He spoke also about the Music Inclusion Program, bringing youngsters together in a unique orchestral program. And as the website says, the Music Inclusion Program is committed to removing individual and systemic barriers of access due to disability and socioeconomic background. The experiences offered with this program bring students with disabilities and their typical peers together as they explore the arts. In our conversation, I mentioned to Adrian that he clearly has a varied career that places emphasis on performing, educating, and speaking. He noted that although he's involved in a range of initiatives, they all stem from a common seed, and that common seed is music. The core of whatever he does stems from the mindset of service. He always asks himself, quote, "How do I use my particular gifts to leave the world a better place, end quote. There are so many lessons that can be learned from Adrian's story. They include the importance of persistence, hard work, teachers who work with students' individual circumstances and develop adaptations, being grateful, and serving others. We all have challenges that we must overcome and endure. Some may be related to our socioeconomic background, our personal lives, our physical or mental health, or disabilities. By acknowledging that we will all need assistance or accommodations in our lives, we may be more willing to open our minds to helping others, especially when they are in need. Let us look to Adrian as a consummate example of how music can make a difference. So Adrian, on behalf of FSMTA, please accept this honor as a sign of our sincere appreciation. Oh, he's holding it up, and recognition of your remarkable work. That's what it looks like. On the award, the inscription states, Breaking Barriers Through Music Award, presented to Adrian Anantawan on behalf of the Florida State Music Teachers Association for his outstanding contributions in advocating access to music making for children with disabilities. Congratulations, Adrian, and thank you.
Thank you both. I'm Charles Turan, the co-chair of the 2021, 22, 23 conference. And first of all, I want to thank Diana for your eloquent remarks. You have spoken for all of us. And thank you to Adrian. It is clear that you deserve this award, Breaking Barriers Through Music. Your passion comes through your music and through every word that you speak. Thank you for sharing with us. And we do look forward to sharing this journey together in whatever way we can. As Adrian typifies breaking physical barriers for music, the next recipient of a Breaking Barriers Award represents breaking socioeconomic barriers through music. But before we hear from her, I want to first introduce Mark Hebda. Mark was scheduled to be the MC for our banquet in Venice, where the in-person conference was to take place last October. And Duffie Adelson was the banquet speaker. It seemed very fitting to ask Mark to introduce Duffie tonight, even though we are not having a banquet, for a number of reasons. First of all, he has been a stellar leader in the local, state, and national levels of the Music Teachers National Association. He has, among other positions, served as the president of the Tallahassee Music Teachers Association, of the Florida State Music Teachers Association, the Florida State Music Teachers Foundation, and served as the director of the Southern Division of Music Teachers National Association. But over the years, he's also become known as an MC extraordinaire. So we could not let this opportunity go by without having Mark serve as the one to introduce Duffie Adelson, who also shares the common roots of Chicago. So at this point, I'll hand it over to Mark, who will now introduce Duffie.
Thank you, Charles. It is my pleasure to introduce Duffie Adelson. During Duffie's 33-year tenure at Merit School of Music in Chicago, she was the driving force in shaping opportunities for personal transformation through music education. The Merit School of Music is a community school, nationally renowned for the caliber of instruction and level of financial support provided to thousands of students annually. She began as an instructor in 1982, and in 5 years was appointed associate director in 1987, executive director in 1993, and president in 2007. Under her leadership, student population and instructional offerings grew significantly, and the organization launched a campaign raising nearly $20 million, allowing Merit to purchase its own building and grow the school's endowment. She is the immediate past board chair for the National Guild for Community Arts Education. She is a life trustee of Merit School of Music, and she serves on the boards of Shy Arts High School and the Chicago Philharmonic. She is a member of the radio committee of classical station 98.7 WFMT and is a member of the Know Your Chicago committee of the Graham School, University of Chicago. Prior to her work at Merit, Duffie directed school music programs in Wisconsin, Massachusetts, and Illinois. And Duffie, as a side note, I think there are probably others in this room besides myself that are curious what you could have accomplished had you not been so lazy in your career. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Duffie Adelson as she addresses us with her talk, Music Education, a Springboard to Success.
Thank you very much for that very kind and generous introduction, Mark. Wasn't that a spectacular presentation we just heard from Adrian? It was remarkable and inspiring indeed. Good evening. And forgive me for looking to my right. I can't seem to shift my talk over to the right screen here, so I'm technologically challenged. But I'm honored and humbled to be here with you this evening and to receive the Breaking Barriers Through Music Award. My deepest thanks go to Gail Berenson, Charles Turon, and the Florida State Music Teachers Association for extending this special opportunity. I'm inspired by the work of your membership, and I'm thrilled to have a chance to share some thoughts with you today. I'm especially honored and humbled to be recognized along such distinguished luminaries as Ruth Greenfield and Adrian Anantawan. I'm so moved by what they've given the world through their pioneering, inspiring, and heroic efforts. And speaking of heroic efforts, let me begin by saluting each and every teacher present and listening today. You are, each of you, transformers, role models, and heroes. Let me repeat, you are heroes, and I thank you, because you go above and beyond and commit considerable energy to share your artistry, passion, and pedagogical expertise. Your students discover and develop their own musical voices, allowing them to join a community with musicians around the globe. The training and nurturing you provide your students unlock doors that can lead to successes in music and beyond. Henry Adams once said, and I quote, "A teacher affects eternity. He can never tell where his influence stops," end quote. A teacher holds enormous power to help shape a student's life, in large part by helping the student learn how to break barriers and move forward. One teacher can indeed change the world for a student. We are often asked to explain why young people need music education. You and I deeply understand the power of music to elevate and inspire. Playing music allows students to partner with some of the most creative and ingenious minds in human history. Where else can a person be a co-creator with the likes of Johann Sebastian Bach or Duke Ellington? That's exactly what happens when you sit at the piano or pick up a violin and begin to play. Making music provides a most powerful avenue for self-expression, which is so essential for young people and for all of us. Could there be a more potent way to unleash human potential than through music education? We know also that music training brings many additional benefits, like the development of discipline, focus, concentration, persistence, coordination, and creative problem solving. As students learn to embrace excellence as a norm, they develop the kind of confidence that springs from solid accomplishment and that is so necessary for success in life. These benefits are game changers for all of us. So how can we, through music education, help our students conquer barriers to success? The old saw that with hard work and enough grit, anyone can pull themselves up by their bootstraps has been challenged by leading thinkers of our time. Talent is equally distributed in every city, in every neighborhood, and on every block. The deck is often stacked What is not equally distributed is opportunity, and the deck is often stacked against many motivated and gifted young people. We must work relentlessly toward equity by asking what each student needs to meet their potential, and then chart pathways to success for each individual student. Collectively, our greatest asset in society is found in the potential of our youth. By helping young people overcome personal barriers, we position them for success. I count myself privileged to have witnessed many former students who conquered barriers and are flourishing in their personal lives and careers while contributing to the betterment of our society and world. A few words about me. I grew up in the Chicago area. My earliest memories are filled with music. Music has been the soundtrack, the heartbeat, and the pathway of my life. I'll share a few secrets. I started the flute in the 4th grade band program, despite my band director telling me that my lips were not the right shape to form a correct embouchure and that my fingers were too fat. Yes, he actually did say that. My college flute professor later would say, one should shape one's peculiarities into perfections, a mantra I adopted and shared with students over the years. And this attitude certainly helped me break some personal barriers. Despite my passionate love of music, I would say that my talent was rather average, and I was considered a late bloomer. But I was highly motivated to succeed and to make a difference in the world, and I came to understand that perseverance is at least as important as innate ability, an idea that became a cornerstone of our school's student creed. And from this, I came to believe firmly that it is the motivated, those with a drive to persist, as well as the gifted, who are our future leaders. And so I became a fierce champion for both the gifted and the motivated. Growing up in the 50s and 60s, my worldview was shaped by the activism and heightened consciousness inspired by the civil rights movement. At the age of 6 or 8, I became aware of racism and some of the egregious inequities in our society, inequities that were and still are tremendous barriers for so many. As a young child, I remember being very angry and wondering what I could do to make things different. Little could I have imagined that one day I would learn of an opportunity to support something powerful and actionable. In 1979, while studying in Boston with renowned music education pedagogist George Bornoff, I received a letter from my mother which would change my life. Folded neatly in that envelope was an article from the Chicago Tribune about a brand new organization called the Merit Program and its tuition-free Saturday music program, which was designed for students in Chicago whose school music programs had been eliminated due to budget cuts. Where would they go to continue their training? They would go to Merit. I was so excited as I read this news clipping that I could hardly finish it. My mind was racing. The goals of this new school, today known as Merit School of Music, aligned perfectly with my life objectives: to introduce the world of music to young people and to improve the world by removing barriers between people, barriers often created by racism. This school could bring together young people who love music but might otherwise never meet one another, providing them with excellent music instruction and transformational friendships. I felt certain that at Merit, students would benefit as much from each other as from the instruction they would receive, and I was right. What followed were the most amazing 33 years of my life. First, working alongside Merit's founding executive director to build the school, and then continuing that growth as I led the school myself, where each and every day we had the privilege of raising kids through music. Merit has always been about breaking barriers by serving as a springboard, enabling students to achieve musical and personal potential by arming them with tools to develop critical musical and life skills. At Merit, students are enveloped in a cocoon of love and rigorous, joyful music making. This culture is amplified by caring teachers, staff, and by a community of like-minded young people who constantly inspire one another to shoot for their highest aspirations and to stay on the path to success. To position students for success, Merit provides substantial support so that economic and other circumstances do not present barriers. Students develop skills to help them gain entrance to college, whether they decide to pursue music as a profession or follow a different path. Today, Merit provides music instruction to thousands of students each week who take private lessons, group instrumental classes, theory, history, chamber music, large ensembles, and more. Instruction takes place in Merit's own building in Chicago's West Loop and in schools and community centers throughout and beyond the city. Merit's most advanced program, its renowned Alice S. Felser tuition-free conservatory, is a magnificent program where the most advanced students take an intensive curriculum of classes and ensemble training. My entire career has been focused on helping students conquer barriers to success. And what are these barriers? Perhaps the most obvious is cost. The cost of lessons, ensemble experiences, instruments, supplies, special programs, professional concert tickets, and more. Schools can raise scholarship and financial aid dollars, as well as special funds to offset these costs. If you are an independent teacher, you may well be able to utilize your personal networks to help students overcome cost barriers. Relationships with university music departments, summer music camps, artists who might give master classes, concert presenters, and others might well open doors to free or affordable opportunities for students. Beyond cost, another major barrier is isolation. My city, Chicago, has been called one of the most segregated cities in the country. Vast swaths of poverty can create isolation. Isolation from resources, opportunities, and positive peer groups, and isolation from access to excellent teachers, good instruments, a culture of high expectations and encouragement. Isolation is a most insidious barrier to success. All students deserve opportunities to study music, but many never have the chance because they are isolated from opportunities. To reach young people who suffer from isolation, we must become inventive, creative, and determined. But let me enlarge the notion of isolation, because it isn't only less advantaged students who suffer from isolation. Any one of us suffers from isolation if we do not have frequent opportunities for meaningful engagement with others who are different than ourselves, perhaps of a different race or ethnicity, a different socioeconomic level, a different age, or a different geographic origin. To get to know someone different than ourselves and to form genuine relationships with that person is to enlarge, enrich, and improve ourselves and our society in fundamental, transformational, and critical ways, and to break down barriers to success. Yo-Yo Ma, in his 2013 Nancy Hanks lecture at the Kennedy Center, described creativity in nature. He talked about the edge effect, which happens, as he tells us, where two ecosystems meet, like the intersection between a forest and a savanna. As he said, quote, "Because of the influence of two ecological communities have on each other, you find the greatest diversity of life, as well as the greatest number of new life forms," end quote. Well, this is just what happens when you diversify human intellectual capital. New ways of knowing and of being develop out of diverse experiences and ideas, enriching and improving society and our own prospects. In a 2016 report issued by the Century Foundation, the authors noted, quote, "There is increasing evidence that diversity makes us smarter. Researchers have documented that students' exposure to other students who are different from themselves and the novel ideas and challenges that such exposure brings leads to improved cognitive skills, including critical thinking and problem solving," end quote. And this diversity will better educate all our students for the 21st century. Making music together is a most intimate experience. And we have seen time and again at Merit that when we bring students of geographic, ethnic, racial, and socioeconomic diversity together, they not only develop deep friendships, they also teach and inspire one another in profound ways, mirroring the kind of transformation that Yo-Yo Ma described. What could possibly be a better vehicle for this kind of transformation than music? For private studio teachers who may not have diversity in their studios, I can imagine, for instance, teaming up with other teachers to put together a day of four-hand piano, instrumental duets, trios, or quartets, allowing students who may not otherwise meet a chance to broaden their horizons by sharing the joy of making music together. For many students, an overarching barrier to success is access. I define access as providing everything a motivated student needs to develop skills necessary for self-expression and the ability to compete with their peers around the world. This means having access to great teachers and a connection to the larger world of opportunities, like summer camps and institutes, professional concerts, competitions, local and national resources, mentoring, internships, and post-secondary guidance, where music teachers play such a critical role, especially if a student plans to major in music. I already mentioned cost as a barrier. Access to instruments, sheet music, and even concert clothing is essential but not readily affordable for every student. Merritt has concert clothing in its library, which students can check out, along with sheet music and music supplies and access to instrument repair and maintenance. They can rent instruments from Merritt's collection at extremely low cost. Students needing pianos can check out keyboards or be paired with donors wanting to donate pianos. By the way, if any of your students need but cannot afford a piano, putting out a word on social media, your local paper, or church bulletin will likely get you offers. Another barrier can be access to transportation to lessons and classes. Schools like Merritt can make arrangements for bus passes and even open up neighborhood branches to bring training opportunities closer to students. Independent teachers can brainstorm with families to come up with a specific transportation plan. Perhaps your transit system offers special passes. With knowledge of specific area transport systems or even carpool opportunities, there are often creative ways to address transportation barriers. A critical barrier students often face is lack of access to a motivated, accomplished, and like-minded community of peers, which is so essential for personal growth. Unfortunately, many students feel like outliers in their high schools and neighborhoods, often having to hide their passion for music to avoid bullying or worse. Arriving at Merritt, they suddenly find themselves surrounded by a like-minded peer group. There is practically nothing more powerful than a positive peer group. As teachers, we can leverage the power of the peer group to amplify our teaching efforts by having students model for one another musical accomplishment, social skills, responsibility, concert and audience etiquette, and more. By forming deep friendships based on a shared love of music, students break down stereotypes of all sorts, helping each other develop a sense of ease in our multicultural, multi-ethnic society, and inspiring one another to have the courage to aim high, stay the course, and not give up. A Merritt alum, now successful in the finance world, recently shared how much his Merritt peer group changed his life. He spoke about the joys of playing the violin with so many inspiring students. He particularly looked to one of our top violin students as an inspiration and personal role model. However, after one concert, he was puzzled to see that student surreptitiously sliding food from a reception table into his pockets, only to find out later that the student was homeless. That, he told me, enlarged his perspective, helping him develop a deep level of humility and respect, which continues to guide him to this day. Another barrier to success can be lack of helpful and positive networks. We can help students begin to build vital networks early on by introducing them to movers and shakers and to those who can help them accelerate their journeys towards success. As we are introducing our students to visiting artists, alumni, civic leaders, board members, and others, we are helping them build vital networks while instilling the powerful message that their world can be your world. When we consider the tremendous role our own networks have played in our lives, we can appreciate the importance of helping our students build and nurture their own. A student needs not only exposure to musical opportunities, but also needs to understand what a pathway to success looks like. Not understanding that pathway can be a significant barrier, and most families will need guidance. We must not just explain the pathway, but also take every opportunity to demonstrate it. For instance, by showing students of many proficiency levels in one recital, we demonstrate what musical advancement looks like, and at the same time, inspire less advanced students to keep practicing. The musical role map must be frequently shared, and we must be prepared to guide families by explaining what the journey will entail, including how to connect to the larger world of opportunities and resources so crucial to musical growth. As we know, the blueprint for success becomes more detailed and multi-layered as students advance, and therefore continual communication with families is imperative. Lacking access to excellent teachers and a rigorous approach to training can be another significant barrier. There is a proud tradition of excellence and rigor baked into the DNA of music pedagogy. Students benefit tremendously when we set an expectation for excellence. From rigorous music training, students develop a mindset they can apply to academic studies and life by developing a proactive approach to their own learning. I've always advised students, take constructive criticism as a compliment because it means that your teachers believe you are capable and able to achieve greatness. And on the other hand, I tell them, you should be insulted and ask your teachers for more if they don't push you to achieve. Merit's co-founder, Emma Endres Counts, was a child prodigy and concert pianist. She once said, "So many children are victims of an education that lets them get by with their least efforts. With us, they cannot." She famously advised her students that to succeed, one must always go above what is expected. Her words still resonate at Merit today, reflected in the tagline, "Excellence in music, excellence in life." A barrier which isn't always obvious is lack of trust. Parents and students need to trust an organization or an individual teacher before they will sign up and truly commit themselves. Often, families are suspicious that opportunities offered sound too good to be true, and they worry that their child will be let down and might be unable to meet the expectations because they can't overcome the various barriers we have discussed. When we make promises to a family, are we able to assure them that we will help them overcome a myriad of barriers or just a few? It is essential to find ways to gain trust with students and their families. Once trust is built, we might become privy to crucial private family information, which may give us unique opportunities to help a student overcome significant barriers. Let me share a powerful example. Many students live in fear of deportation for themselves and their families. They are often unable to access critical opportunities because of an undocumented status. When we learned of Teresa Lee's story, we were able to take action that not only changed her life, but also led to a national effort to help millions of other undocumented students. Teresa came to Merit having taught herself piano for years, since her family could not afford the lessons. One day, a high school teacher brought her to Merit to see whether we could provide lessons for her. Our piano faculty immediately recognized her tremendous talent and recommended an accelerated course of piano lessons along with classes in our Alice S. Felser tuition-free conservatory. Within a year, Teresa won a competition and performed the first movement of the Tchaikovsky Piano Concerto with the Chicago Symphony. During Teresa's senior year, our artistic director asked to see her college applications. She noticed that Teresa's Social Security number was missing from each form and sent her home with the instruction to fill in that number. Teresa came back the next week, but the number was still missing. At that point, Teresa broke down sobbing, revealing the secret that her father told her to never tell anyone, which was that she and most of her family were undocumented immigrants. Terrified, she begged our artistic director not to turn her family in, promising never to do anything like that. We contacted our U.S. Senator, Dick Durbin, to see if he could help. He heard Teresa play and was inspired by her playing, but dismayed to learn of the barrier caused by her lack of documentation, and to learn that, like thousands of other U.S. students, she was brought to the U.S. as a toddler. This was the only country she had ever known. Her story inspired Senator Durbin to draft a new bill called the DREAM Act. The senator invited Teresa and our artistic director to come to Congress to testify. They were heading to Washington, D.C. on the very morning that 9/11 happened, so they had to turn around and go home. Although there had been bipartisan support for the DREAM Act, the mood in the nation immediately shifted after 9/11, and the act still has not passed at the federal level all these years later, although the efforts brought the issue to the attention of the nation and eventually led to the creation of DACA. Teresa now holds 3 degrees in piano, including a DMA from Manhattan School of Music. She was recently featured in a book entitled Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, 100 Immigrant Women Who Changed the World. She is a frequent public speaker whose voice has been heard across the nation as she shared her experiences as the nation's first dreamer. As we gain trust with students and their families, we have many opportunities to help our students conquer their barriers, and we can do so as long as we ask the question, what does this student need now in order to thrive? Do I need to reach out and try to find additional resources, or am I able to provide what is needed myself? Willingness to ask this question, whether as an organization or an individual teacher, is key to serving our students to the greatest extent possible. In other words, just as it takes a village to raise a child, it takes an entire musical community to support the development of an emerging artist as they overcome barriers to succeed. Each teacher who is part of this community is essential. When an individual student wins, we all win. A final thought is this: sometimes the biggest barrier is a student's lack of hope and a disbelief that success is possible for them. I deeply believe that we each must be extremely proactive and speak up when we have advice. We never know when our voice is the voice that will be heard and internalized and will help a student overcome a barrier. Adults who struggled as young people often cite one person who spoke up and shared transformational advice, and it was often a teacher. Your voice might be that voice. Your advice may very well change a life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Duffie. It is hard to imagine anyone more deserving of an award called the Breaking Barriers than our speaker, Duffie Adelson. Duffie, in a room full of people who have witnessed the transformative power of music working in the lives of humanity and of individuals, you might feel you are among colleagues. I should tell you, though, that you are also among admirers. Your biography chronicles your accomplishments in delivering this transformation, primarily through the vehicle of the Merit School, to countless children and adults of every age. People who would otherwise never have the opportunity to see themselves as powerful, much less with the opportunity to demonstrate it. And while we admire you, we are also grateful to you for your work, which you described in an interview as the coming together of your 2 life goals. For the thousands whom you have helped throughout your life are now not only accomplished musicians, but more fulfilled human beings, more connected and resilient, deeper thinkers, more able to express themselves than before. And perhaps even more than that, they now have the means to experience what we in this room know as one of the pinnacle experiences in life. They themselves can now help someone else feel the transformative power of music and break down barriers of their own. It is now my honor and privilege to present to you FSMTA's Breaking Barriers Award with a plaque that reads, Breaking Barriers Through Music Award presented to Duffie A. Adelson on behalf of the Florida State Music Teachers Association for her outstanding contributions in promoting equal access to music making for children from all socioeconomic backgrounds, dated 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, please, another round of applause for Duffie.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you again for inviting me this evening. And I thank you for this special, very special recognition, which I'm honored to accept on behalf of so many individuals who have worked with me to remove barriers for students. Thank you again.
And thanks to both of you, Mark and Duffie. You have given us a lot to think about. And I, for one, I'm glad that this is being recorded so I can go back and take some notes. You've defined so many different types of barriers that can prevent all of us sharing the transformative power of music. But I think most importantly, you not only talk the talk, but you have clearly walked the walk, and you've shared your life's journey. It's clearly not over yet, but thank you so much. And so now we've heard our second of the three recipients of the Breaking Barriers Award. Before we hear about our third recipient, Ruth Greenfield, I would like to introduce to you Mary Seal. Mary Seal, like Mark Hebda, has served as past president of the Florida State Music Teachers Association, the Florida State Music Teachers Foundation, and is currently the president of District 7 of FSMTA. And as district president, she served as a member and a very important member of the conference committee. Especially important was her chairing of the programming committee. And we thank you for all of your efforts in that regard. Before I hand it over to Mary, though, I want to say finally that it was through Mary that we became acquainted with Bill Dawson, and through Bill Dawson that we became acquainted with Ruth Greenfield. And that provided Gail and I both inspiration that has really empowered this conference. So we thank you, Mary, for your contributions. And now I know you have a few words to say about Bill before we hear his videos. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you so much, Charles. This has already been such an inspiring evening, but I think you will continue to be inspired and enlightened by yet one more honoree of our first Breaking Barriers the Music Award. So hello, everyone. I am just introducing, as I would have done if the conference were live, I'm going to introduce a video of my dear friend and colleague, Bill Dawson, who many of you may know. He is going to introduce you to his longtime friend and musical colleague, Ruth Greenfield. We are presenting Ruth Greenfield with the Breaking Barriers Through Music Award. When the conference was in its planning stages in 2021, I mentioned to Bill, who lives in my district, and is an eminent pianist and composer, I should add. I mentioned to Bill that the conference topic would be called Breaking Barriers Through Music, and that this could be many types of barriers that might be broken. And he immediately told me that we should consider featuring or honoring Ruth Greenfield in some way. I did not know her and was not aware of her remarkable contributions then, but he quickly sent me a link to a documentary video, which was prepared and shown on one of the local PBS stations in Miami during the 1990s. It is called Instruments of Change, and you will be viewing portions of that video this evening after Bill's introduction of her. As Bill explains, and as you will see in the video made about her, Ruth Greenfield, through the force of her outgoing personality and sense of fairness and justice for all people in her community, made it her mission in the 1950s and 1960s to make music lessons and dance training available to all children, no matter what race or ethnic background they might be. She was a pioneer in doing this during that time of segregation in Florida and elsewhere, and she took great personal risks in doing so. She and her husband both were active in desegregating music and art and drama too, and dance lessons to all children. And it was not always popular for her to do that. So because of Ruth's advanced age, in 2021, she was already 97. It was decided that it might be best for Bill and I to go in person to interview her and present her with the award then. And so at the end of the whole presentation, you will see my interview with Ruth and how we presented the award to her in her home. We were planning a live conference, of course, then, but here we are almost 2 years later. So when we arrived at Ruth's home, she and her son welcomed us warmly. And after about 5 minutes, she had made me feel as if I had known her my whole life and maybe had been an old family friend or even a student in the past. So we all had a really, I thought we all did anyway, I know I did, have a wonderful time there. And it was an amazing experience, a very deep experience for me as a musician and music teacher, to have had that experience of meeting her and speaking with her. It was just very special. After our talk and presentation, I was also struck, she hadn't pointed these out, but I saw it subsequently. I was struck by the numerous awards that she has received over the years, many of which are on display in her home. I know you will both enjoy and be inspired by her story. She truly has been an instrument of change in many people's lives. And I would just like to add that recently Ruth received one more award. Our award is not the last award. She's received one more award. Upon turning 99 years old this fall, the city of Miami honored her by naming a street for her. It is called Ruth Greenfield Way, and she was able to go there for that presentation and was interviewed on television too. So we should all be so fortunate. And I think you will really enjoy first Bill's introduction and then Ruth Greenfield, Instrument of Change.
Hi, I'm Bill Dawson, a longtime member of the Southwest Florida Music Teachers Association. Most of you have probably never heard of Ruth Greenfield, the extraordinary woman we are honoring today. When I started teaching at Miami-Dade College in 1978, I met Ruth for the first time. She and I happened to be the only two music professors at this brand new campus in downtown Miami. Soon I was to realize what an utterly astonishing and consequential person my colleague was. Although Ruth herself was completely self-effacing and never spoke of her accomplishments, I soon learned of her remarkable life as concert pianist, teacher, civic activist, and social justice pioneer. Ruth's humility is one of the most endearing traits of her character. Like many of us, Ruth Greenfield has been a dedicated music teacher most of her life. However, Ruth is uniquely celebrated for combining the study of music with the breaking of racial barriers in Miami, founding a color-blind conservatory in the 1950s and early 1960s, which was considered a scandalous thing at that time, and which even caused her to be expelled by certain music teachers' organizations in Miami. Ruth was born in Key West in 1923, a child of immigrant Poles. Her parents moved to Miami when Ruth was 6 months old. She studied piano with Manazuka, who moved there from New York City, and went on to study with Nadia Boulanger in Paris. She earned her doctorate degree in music at the University of Michigan, where she studied with the illustrious concert pianist Artur Schnabel. Returning to Miami after spending time abroad, she was bewildered by a segregated society where a talented young black child didn't have any opportunity to receive serious training in music. In 1951, Ruth then courageously founded in a black neighborhood the first fully integrated school of music, art, and dance for kids in Miami, if not the South. She raised funds so that poor students could receive scholarships. Today's numerous distinguished African Americans who have become educators, school principals, doctors, lawyers, newspaper publishers, political leaders, all testify to the crucial and pivotal impact that attending Ruth's conservatory had on them, on their development as children, and their subsequent success as adults. We all have heard of the so-called Mozart effect, which refers to benefits of childhood exposure to classical music, like mental and social development. As it happened, Ruth's impact on children went far beyond teaching little fingers to play. Her investment in underprivileged minority kids enriched their understanding of being human, put them in personal contact with the greatness of Western civilization, embedded meaning and discipline and value and synergy, self-esteem in their lives. And if this isn't enough, Ruth was a trailblazer in terms of her cultural contributions to the city of Miami. In the 1970s, when downtown Miami was declining, Ruth was instrumental in working with city officials to revitalize the languishing center of town by working hard to procure grants and establishing the very successful Lunchtime Lively Arts series in a refurbished old movie theater where once a week, shoppers and office workers would bring their bag lunch to see and hear a variety of professional artistic events free of charge. I was privileged to perform there on many occasions. My final remarks are this, and that is pure love, not any kind of partisan political motivation, that motivated all the good things that Ruth Greenfield has so graciously bequeathed. I believe that her legacy of love is exactly the model for what this world today so desperately needs. No one could be more deserving of the award we are presenting today than Ruth Greenfield. Thank you.
For someone in Miami in the 1950s to try to implement a program where blacks are brought into the arts in a public way, not to mention with white people as well, was unheard of and very risky.
Who was to say, because we were African Americans, that we could be exempt from the fine arts?
The Fine Arts Conservatory broke all the barriers.
They wanted to see you succeed, and I thought that was one of the best things that happened to me since I was born.
The conservatory was this island of integration.
The Fine Arts Conservatory became my second home.
White and black teachers working together with white and black kids in the early 1950s is unprecedented.
We didn't know that we were different, but we definitely knew that we were special because that's what we were taught.
It's Thursday, and I'm looking up at the Eiffel Tower.
My inspiration for the Fine Arts Conservatory really originated in Paris. I went to Paris in the summer of 1949 to study at the Fontainebleau. I studied with Nadia Boulanger, who taught Aaron Copland, George Gershwin, and even me. I noticed that there was no segregation there. And after Arnold, my husband, and I returned from Paris, we had a different view of sociability. And when we came back and saw there was so much regulation of the races being separated, I knew that I couldn't teach the way I had taught before in Miami, that I had to open it up to anyone who was gifted, no matter what economy they were in or what their race was.
My mother was a rabid integrationist. My mother was on a mission, and her mission was to bring music and art and dance to South Florida, but to bring it to everyone, not just white people.
The Fine Arts Conservatory that was started by Ruth Greenfield in 1951 was a blessing to this town. In fact, a blessing to the country, because here was a white woman who would come into a black neighborhood and teach black children how to sing and dance and emote and things like that. And during those days, you know, people did not accept that. Segregation was rough.
Black people could not vote without fear of retribution, losing their jobs if they voted, or even worse. You could not attend public places if you were a black person, public beaches, parks, swimming pools were not open to blacks. You could not shop in some stores downtown without being subject to segregation. A black woman could not try on clothes at Bernard's and other department stores here. Blacks could not hold certain jobs. They were not admitted to labor unions. The school system was very, very segregated.
Miami was a deep South city, as deep as you can get in terms of racial segregation. A segregation wall was built in the late 1930s that separated the black half of Northwest 12th Avenue north of 62nd Street from the white half. That was the Liberty Square, Liberty City half, to wall off the black people from the white people. A wall was erected as late as 1948 in Coconut Grove that bifurcates a block that separates the white half of the block from the black half of the block.
You wonder, you know, what you did. I mean, you must have done something wrong. And I asked my mother, well, what did we do? Why are we treated like this? And she can give me an answer. She said, you're treated like this because these are the laws, and you were treated like this because you were born a different color.
There was a music program at the Miami Library which was dedicated to Miami composers, and it was a natural for Jim to play. So I called and spoke to the woman who was in charge, and I said, I've got a very talented young man, and he's ready to play on your program.
And then when they found that I was Negro, they didn't use the word Afro-American then. They said I wasn't qualified to play.
So I called Jack Bell, who was called the town crier at the Herald, and I told him the story. And he said, yeah, he'll put something in. And it happened to be National Music Week. So he said in the article, a young man, highly gifted, had a father who was a doctor, a mother who's a principal, and he can't play in public with others. Isn't that really a sad indication of our city? The next day the woman called and said he can play.
The Fine Arts Conservatory instituted a curriculum. With that curriculum, students were enrolled in 3 to 5 courses, and they studied with one instructor for 6 weeks or so, and then went into another program.
Everything eventually was taught there. Drama, art, ballet, At first, it was all music.
The kids used to come on Saturday. They would be so happy to see a white face that would smile back at them. You didn't see many of that.
For some of us, it was the only experience that we had with white people. And we got a chance to see that we are more alike than we are different. Perhaps what I learned most and gained most from the Fine Arts Conservatory was to become an advocate of the arts. As the founder of the Black Archives History and Research Foundation of South Florida and the historic Overtown Folklife Lyric Theater Complex, provided an opportunity for youth and students and adults of all ages, cultures and creeds and races to enjoy the arts and the glory days of Overtown. I don't know that I would have had that perspective if it had not been for the Fine Arts Conservatory.
I heard that there was a conservatory and they would admit black students. And then they said you could go in there and they'd teach you some of the fine steps in playing the clarinet because that's what I wanted to do. It's just a big difference to walk into a conservatory and you didn't have to sit in the back. I mean, you were just a person, you were a free individual. You know, you see all these great instructors there and people who wanted to be there and wanted to work with you and wanted to see you successful. We did classical music at that particular time. You know, even today, I hear pictures at an exhibition. I hear Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture, Sibelius, Finlandia. And I hear all of these things and I can appreciate those because of some of the things I learned at the conservatory. It changed my life because when I became the principal of Drew Elementary, a school with art, music, drama, and dance, I kept thinking about the conservatory. And those people downtown in the administration building, they said how successful our program was, but they didn't have to tell me that. I knew because it was a magnet program, and people started auditioning to come to our school. It's a school in the inner city that drew people like Hillary Clinton. We had Governor Graham to come there. They came because they wanted to see the children, what they were doing, and they wanted to see how they were achieving. And I was so proud of that. And as we did it, I kept thinking about the conservatory.
My sister went to Fine Arts Conservatory as well.
I studied ballet, and I studied music and musical theater. I remember vividly Miss Greenfield, because she taught me getting to know you, getting to know all about you, getting to like you, getting to hope you like me.
Lucia and Sheila went there and they enjoyed it. They were there as little children. And the program there was really fit for young people.
We were so nurtured, we didn't know it at the time, and so protected and so supported. The entire day was just a whirlwind of activity. And we were just a bunch of little kids running around putting on a show. And it was so enriching for us, and we thought the entire world was like that because who knew that it wasn't? We didn't know that we were different, but we definitely knew that we were special because that's what we were taught.
Somehow we knew that music and dance was a privilege. It was an honor and a privilege to be a part of something like Fine Arts Conservatory. We could not have expressed it directly as little kids, but we knew, and we carried ourselves as if we knew.
Ms. Greenfield actually had us in a little tour company here in Miami-Dade County, if you can believe that.
The conservatory, I think, was to raise money would have performances around town.
One of the recitals I remember was The Little Engine That Could. And it was the costuming for it and the preparations, learning the dance steps and learning the songs and learning about musicality and working together to make one big thing happen. At the end of it all, there was this huge sense of accomplishment and this feeling like, wow, I really did this.
We developed a love for the arts, a lifelong love of the arts.
You were dancing, you were speaking, you were singing, you were doing some sort of a solo. The experiences were so useful for one's everyday life and for the things I do right now.
We never forgot the lessons that we learned at the Fine Arts Conservatory. We knew about equality, but we also knew what it meant to be Black and to open doors for other people and provide opportunities for people who were less fortunate or who did not have those opportunities.
And it did provide a foundation for the rest of our lives in terms of confidence, in terms of an appreciation for the world, and finding your place in it.
The Fine Arts Conservatory changed my life in many, many ways. First of all, confidence, which is essential for a young African American growing up in segregation, in circumstances where you may not always be told that you're okay. But at Fine Arts Conservatory, you knew that. Every time you walked in the door, you were validated as a human being. You may go home and watch television and people were being sprayed with water, bitten by dogs, just for you to have basic civil rights. But when you walked in Fine Arts Conservatory, you got on your toes. You felt elevated. It was just self-expression that was outside of the pain. The Fine Arts Conservatory was that link for me early on. So when I had very serious challenges as a teenager, I could sing right through it. When I've had challenges as an adult, I can sing right through it.
My mother went from being scorned in the 1950s as this person who was forcing integration and music on everyone to someone who was adored and who was revered in a way because she was bringing music to everyone in Miami.
She wanted to create a little piece of Paris in Miami, and she was able to do it.
It's not fair to say of Miami that we did a lot more than others did, but I think that we helped with the splendor of sound.
Welcome.
You can blame it on.
I will. Welcome, one and all. This is a very special occasion. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Mary Griffin Seal. I am a former president of FSMTA, and many of you probably know me through that. I am the current District 7 president, and also the program chair for the 2021 conference for FSMTA called Breaking Barriers Through Music. Today is such a special occasion. It's May 30th, 2021, and I'm here at the home of Dr. Ruth Greenfield in Miami, along with my colleague and good friend, Bill Dawson. Bill, here. Bill currently, and has for quite a while, lived in Southwest Florida. Many of you may remember he was, I think in the year 2007, he was the Florida State Composer of the Year for Florida. Hey. And I am proud to count him as one of my friends. But the very, very special reason for us coming to Miami today is to honor this woman, Dr. Ruth Greenfield. Ruth Greenfield grew up in Miami, and she went to the University of Miami and received her degree, at least the first one at the university, correct?
I know I received 2 years there.
2 years there.
And one of the teachers whispered in my ear, go to Michigan.
I had heard something about Michigan. Okay, so she went to the University of Michigan, completed bachelor's and master's degrees there. After marrying and going to France, she studied with Nadia Boulanger, and along with a few other people you may have heard of, like Aaron Copland, many other famous Americans, George Gershwin. But anyway, upon returning to Miami to start their lives here, the Greenfields, Ruth in particular, wanted to provide arts education to all students, all children, regardless of race or ethnicity. At that time, Miami, and in fact all of the South really, was under segregation. Ruth and her family went through many, many evolutions of trying to start, and they were successful, bringing a conservatory of fine arts to this community, to an underserved community. There was really no opportunity particularly for Black students to receive real arts education at that time. In her cause of doing this, she was blacklisted from several music teacher organizations. So we all feel that on the conference committee and our president, Anna Fagan, on behalf of all of us, we thought it was only appropriate to honor her today with our very first Breaking Barriers Through Music Award. And I just wanted to take a moment at this time to ask Ruth if you would like to say something about the work you did.
Thanks so much, Mary. I loved hearing you play the piano. And of course, my composer friend over here.
This is typical of this woman. She's always deflecting any glory that's passed her way.
Well,
and the humility is incredible.
Well, let's say it's because I'm with the two of you. May I do that?
You may do whatever you like. This is your day.
It was difficult to go to France and come back and see that in Paris, classes were filled with every race and nationality. It depended
I
upon
see.
the degree of music that they needed. So when I came back, there was nothing else to do but open up the music school.
Well, yes, that you were very brave to do that. And upon watching the film that was made about you, Instruments of Change, it was apparent that many children from the 50s and 60s grew up to be wonderfully productive and valuable members of their communities, of the communities at large. Many of them are teachers or lawyers, doctors.
Exactly.
They become educators, and you know, a lot of them credit the training and experiences they got through your school as giving them the start.
Thank you, Mary. I think that just having musical training and knowing that the other person sitting next to you is also part of your life is as good as not really having to be a professional musician later.
Right.
Because some of our people went on to be judges, like Wendell Graham.
That's important.
And other things, and we just know that it was the music that will stay with them in some soulful way.
Right, in a very meaningful way.
Excuse my voice. I have a little condition.
It's fine.
Fine to me.
It sounds fine.
It's okay, I'll watch it.
Yes.
And then I also know that your work didn't stop with the school, that after classes were opened so that they were more readily, you know, music and arts education was more readily available to everyone in the community, that you also had some help in revitalizing the downtown of Miami at a time when it really wasn't so thriving. I know Bill can speak to that.
Well, I can because actually Ruth invited me to perform on quite a few concerts.
Yes.
And you had the big art center down on Flagler Street.
And the Gosman Hall.
The Gosman Hall.
Yes.
And over the years, you must have raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, and from foundations to bring great artists. And I understand that your inspiration for this was what was going on in London at lunchtime.
Oh, what a good memory.
Yes. Tell people about that.
What is Trafalgar Square?
Yes.
Yeah, when we were over there, I noticed that people were taking their lunch and listening to performances right there at Trafalgar Square.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So that seemed to be a natural to bring people together, whatever they were eating or not eating at that particular time of day, give them a show.
And she had a big audience that would show up there. And as I say, there were a lot of celebrity names in music and dance and jazz and all sorts of areas of art that would appear on her series.
Well, you know why?
And I was honored to be part of some of them.
Well, the thing was that they were performing for a very heavy amount somewhere the next night or day. And they would come to us in the middle of the day. We'd give them something, and they're glad.
Well, that's wonderful.
So we got paid off with some good people, including this young man.
Well, it had a lot to do with the development of culture in the downtown area, which wasn't too much at that time, but you really made milestones there. And another thing that going back to this conservatory that Ruth founded, you know what? I can't emphasize enough. It wasn't just about teaching the little fingers to play. What it really was about was love, and that's what we need today. We wish we had more of that in relations, in racism. But she loved these people, and that's crucial. That's so important, and it needs to be honored. You need to be honored for that.
Well, it was easy to do it.
And you've inspired.
It was. It couldn't have all been easy.
What?
It must not all
No,
have been easy.
no,
To like
no.
people, isn't that right?
Oh, that's true.
But
That's true.
but that work is a real inspiration for me and for people who now know about you. It's just to go on and do their thing and their contributions.
Thank you so much,
Yes.
Bill. And I just never thought of myself as
No,
any
you didn't.
different.
I know you didn't. I know.
And we had a very good league of faculty, didn't we? At Ivy Day?
Yes, you did.
We did.
We had a lot of fun building the place. Remember when I met you, there was no music stand, not a music stand. But we got that eventually, and pianos and everything else. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to have a music school without a music stand.
Yeah.
Yeah, finally got one over there.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know,
All right.
why should we wait?
Why should we wait? Let's do this right
We
now.
have, let's see if I can get this out. Look at this, people.
Oh my God.
Look at this.
Oh, this is absolutely too much.
Yes. No, it's not. It's not
That's
enough.
The back, actually,
It's-
that's the backside.
It's not enough.
What does it say?
Can I read it?
Can I
read
hold it up? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, let's have Bill read it.
Let
and
me
hold
read it to
up.
you.
Let me-
It says, well, it has the logo of the Florida State Music Teachers Association at the top, and it says Breaking Barrier Award 2021, presented to Dr. Ruth Greenfield of Miami, Florida, in behalf of Florida State Music Teachers Association for her outstanding contributions and achievements promoting social justice through music and arts education. And you deserve this and a lot more. A lot more.
Yes, you do. And let's just give her a little round of applause right here. Hopefully other people will do that when they see this.
I am very touched because it really is written out.
Yes, it is.
It really is.
It says it all, I think.
And I almost recognize the person. Where are we going to put this, Frank?
I'll have to rearrange the wall.
Thank you. So handsome. And I am.
Should I?
Yes, cut it out. Yeah, that.
Well, thank each of you for staying with us for these hours of inspiration. And I want to give a special recognition to each who participated. You know, we gave everyone who had agreed to participate in the 2021 conference, we give them the opportunity. After it was canceled again in 2022, you don't have to do this, but each one wanted to do it. And I'm sure that if she were able, Ruth Greenfield herself would be here with us. The one word that to me that draws it all together is commitment. And through the commitment that we have celebrated and shared today, the power of music has broken the barriers of a global pandemic and a hurricane, and provided inspiration to all of us. Before we finish, I've asked our webmaster, Amy Turan, to pull up the rest of our conference schedule in case you haven't had a chance to look it over. It is on our website, fmta.org. And besides the two other live events, which will be next Saturday, January 28th, and then February 18th, we will also have several other recordings that will be posted on the days that are listed on our conference schedule. I just want to emphasize that these are times when they will first become available, but once that they have become posted, they will remain permanently available, not only through this conference, but then archived on our website. So please look over that schedule and join us again for these events coming up. And now I would like to turn it over to my esteemed colleague and co-chair of the conference, Gail Berenson.
Thank you, Charles. Let me just wrap things up quickly here. First of all, my name is Gail Berenson, and I, along with Charles Turan, am one of the co-chairs of this year's conference. We're so happy to see this conference finally come to fruition. So let me first begin by congratulating our amazing recipients of our Breaking Barriers in Music Award. A very special thank you to Adrian Anantawan, to Duffie, Adelson, and to Ruth Greenfield for the significant contributions you have made. We are so happy that we are able to recognize your accomplishments, even though it had to be virtual. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of this wonderful celebration. Our special thanks also go to Joy McIntyre for her very inspiring welcome. We're very grateful to you, Joy, for your willingness to take on this important role tonight. And although it was incredibly disappointing for the FSMTA board to have to make the very difficult decision to cancel our conference in Venice, which would have been our first in-person conference since 2019. I mean, we were really ready. But Hurricane Ian and its impact on our hotel made that a necessary decision. However, the exciting outcome of this decision is our ability to make this very special conference available to the public, to the general public. The additional good news, as Charles just said, this conference will be permanently archived on the FSMTA website and accessible to anyone around the world to view at no cost whenever they wish. As a result, we hope to reach a wide range of viewers and benefit countless individuals now and in the future. I just want to mention our next presentation, which will take place on Saturday, a week from today, January 28th at 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and will feature Lois Svard, a renowned pianist, pedagogue, and noted expert on the subject of neuroscience and applying current research to the study and performance of music. So we hope to see you on the 28th or whenever you are able to access Lois's exciting presentations at your convenience. I also want to extend our profound thanks to Amy Turan, without whose help this conference would never have happened. So now please stay online for a moment as we acknowledge our generous sponsors. And I want to thank you all for logging on and wishing you all a good night. Amy.
Gail, I can't get the audio to run. I can just.
Well, shall we just, oh, no? Shall we just log off and save that for the next time? Yeah, we'll do that. So, good evening, everybody. Have a good night and a wonderful week. And we hope to see you back here next week at the same time, same place.
Take care, everyone. Good night.
Good night.